Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just click the link in the show description to support now.
Before we get started with another great edition of the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast, I do want to let you know, Zencastr.com. That's right, Zencastr.com. They are without a doubt my favorite website to head over to for all of these great conversations that you hear on the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast. Superior quality in sound. Also, they have a great video option as well if you need to record your videos. But the best part about it is the files are all split separately into MP3s. So you can edit them separately, you can put them together, do whatever you got to do. The main idea is Zencastr. Zencastr.com. That's Zencastr for all of your podcasting, video conferencing, even if you just want to have a great conversation with your loved ones. All your needs there online for communication, Zencastr has you covered. That's right.
You're locked in.
Look at what we have here, folks.
To the only show that matters.
The cream of the crop.
Duke Loves Rasslin.
And there is no one that does it better than
your host.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
The Duke.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hello, my brothers, my sisters, non-binaries, extraterrestrials, and everybody else in between there. Welcome back to the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast, the show about pro wrestling and everything else. We are officially in 2023, and you know there's no better way to kick off the new year than going to my man that has the stats, has the facts, has the great perspective, because he utilizes all of that stuff I just mentioned in order to help him arrive at the conclusions that he arrives at. And most importantly, he's become one of the most debated topics that appear on Duke Loves Rasslin. I mean, legitimately, many of you out there, especially in all the different social media groups, you love discussing this man's findings and agreeing and disagreeing and everything in between. So this is interesting. Welcome back and welcome officially in 2023, our main man, Rob the Genius. What's going on there, Rob?
Hey, well, good to be back. And so Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy birthday.
Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate that, Rob. And listen, I just turned 40 years old, okay? I just turned 40 years old, and I'll tell you, I don't know if you saw this, but on SmackDown, we had John Cena come back. He wrestled in the main event, the tag team match, and all anyone could talk about was his bald spot. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, well, damn, that's part of the reason why I shaved my head now, because my hairline was Stephen A. Smith, 10 years ago, but now, the bald spot, I just shave it all off. I can't believe what they were saying about Cena, Rob.
Well, you know what? Look. It was bad. And look, okay, he's going to be on. He's on TV. He does movies, and okay. I'm sorry. It's a visual medium. We are a superficial people when it comes to our actors and actresses, and particularly if they're playing certain roles. He needs to go invest in a hair system of some kind, because
does he need to do the Shawn Michaels hair plugs,
or go get the shag wig like Naito in New Japan, go get the right. I mean, something, right? I mean,
are you prepared for a fully bald John Cena? Is that something?
Yeah. See, that's the thing, right? Because look, the bald look doesn't work for everybody. I have no idea how it would look for him, but he's got to do something different. Because look, the whole thing is, when it comes to losing hair, if you start losing your hair, you got to find the look that works for you, right?
Yeah.
So, look that works for you on TV, right?
Everybody can't be Cesaro. I like how Cesaro has his.
Yeah. So if
Claudio, whatever he calls himself today, I like how
if the bald head works for you, cool. If it thins out in a few places but people don't care, then don't worry about it. But if people are clowning you about it, then you gotta find something that works. For you, he's got to get some type of hair system going on here.
Listen,
right?
these are wise words here, because how old are you again, Rob?
I'm 48, sir.
I cannot believe that you are 8 years older than me, Rob. That is fascinating. I always thought you were a couple years younger than me. I didn't realize that you were older. So now it all makes sense when you're online straightening people out.
Yeah, because it's funny because a lot of these folks on Twitter, I mean, you start following people, you become mutuals, and you talk to them a little bit, and then you might click on their bio, and you see like 22, like what?
Talking crazy,
20, 22, 23, and like, good Lord, I could, I could be your father. Okay,
literally, you have socks older than them. I mean, let's call it what it is, right?
And so like when CM Punk was at the media scrum, when he said, "I'm old and tired and I work with children," that's how it can feel sometimes for me on Twitter when people are talking crazy.
No, that's all they do. They talk. And here's what I love. These kids, like you said, you look in their bio, 22, 24, 26, they will talk to you as if they are the biggest wrestling expert ever. And whatever their perspective is on pro wrestling is the perspective, full stop. So if you say anything different, then what do you clearly don't watch, or you clearly don't understand this. It's like, kid, literally my first feud was Flair versus Harley Race in the NWA. We're talking the early 80s. Like you weren't even a gleam in your mama's eye. Like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, because I started watching in 1985, and it was, the first WrestleMania. Like a lot of people in my age group, the first WrestleMania was the hook that brought us in. For me, I saw the poster with Hulk Hogan standing next to Mr. T, and in 1985, Mr. T was about as big of a pop culture figure as could be.
Sure,
right? I mean, he was doing the A-Team. He had been in Rocky 3.
Remember Mr. T cereal? Did you ever eat Mr. T cereal?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And he had a cartoon. I mean, like, Mr. T was huge in 1985.
Yep.
So to see a poster of Mr. T standing next to Hulk Hogan with this, name WrestleMania under it. Well, and I had a few friends who were wrestling fans, right, already. So they talked about it from time to time, but I didn't really, pay it much mind other than listening to them a little bit. So when I saw this thing, I was like, well, okay, well, what's this about? And in 1985, WrestleMania was at Madison Square Garden, so you had to either go there or you had to go to some closed circuit TV location, and since I was just getting started to get interested in this stuff, I wasn't gonna, try to bug my dad to take me to one of those things, right? So I just started watching wrestling on TV. My dad, he saw me watching it one day, and my dad, the straight shooter that he always was, the first thing he says, like, it's fake, right?
Oh boy.
But here's the thing, right? I was not deterred because I thought it was just fascinating seeing these guys do this stuff. And one day I'm watching, and then he walks by and he sees Bruno Sammartino on commentary. Turns out Dad used to go see Bruno Sammartino back in the day. Right? So when he saw Bruno Sammartino on commentary, and he would sit down and watch it sometimes with me, and we would talk about it a little bit, and then he started, he took me to some shows. So he wasn't saying it's fake to try and, rain on the parade or anything. That's just how my dad was a straight shooter.
Well, you're lucky because I didn't find out until Hogan versus Warrior. When the Ultimate Warrior defeated Hulk Hogan, I thought Hulk Hogan was dead. I bawled my eyes out. No, and just like you just laughed, the entire household, my father, his buddies, they all were laughing at me. They're like, "What the hell's wrong with you? Don't you know it's fake?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I thought, because I had never seen Hulk Hogan lose, other than that thing with Andre. But even that, it wasn't as bad as this. So I was traumatized over that, which drove me to choose Ric Flair over Hulk Hogan forevermore, because Ric Flair could lose and still be Ric Flair. I could not handle Hulkamania ever being defeated. The biggest hero in life. I couldn't handle it. It was too much, man. So kudos to your dad. He spared you from that kind of trauma, Rob.
And look, man, we had some good times going to see shows, and the first show he took me to was Hulk Hogan and Terry Funk in the main event.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh yeah.
The good old days.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah. Wow, that's Saturday night's main event and all that. That's all that's happening.
Oh yeah, yes sir. Yeah, and
man.
But here's the thing, right? So even though I knew it was a work, like when Hogan got taken out by King Kong Bundy, like it still felt like it was still a tough thing to swallow.
Sure.
Because I was watching it I was watching it. To me, it was the same as when Luke Skywalker fought Darth Vader the first time. He got his hand cut off, right?
Yep.
Mark Hamill didn't really get his hand cut off, but you're into the characters and all of that, so you see this thing happen. I believe when I started watching NWA stuff, I believed that, Dusty's going to beat Rick this time. He's going to do it this time. Oh yeah. And of course it didn't happen. Right.
Did you see when the Road Warriors took the spike off of their pads and they blinded Dusty Rhodes?
That was a tough day for me because I was a big fan of Dusty and the Road Warriors. So
did you watch it when it first aired though? Because when it first aired, they showed the blood when it first aired.
I did, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is a lot." Okay.
I don't think they were allowed to show it on TV much after that. They might have showed a replay, and that was it.
Well, because that was after Turner had bought,
good
Jim
point.
Crockett out,
and he was pissed. He was pissed about it. I think Dusty got fired over that.
He did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, that's why he got fired.
Yeah, he got fired, and that's when he went to the WWF after that.
Yeah, and he got fired over that because he booked that segment, and it was against the standards, and they hadn't really done anything like that. They hit people with chairs, they had busted people open, but this was like looking. It looked like you were gouging the man's eyes out with a metal spike.
It looked like they were trying to kill him legitimately. And for folks who don't know, here we go again, right? We're talking now. What year would you say this is? This is the late '80s at this point.
That was '88 when that happened.
That was '88. So Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, he's a big hero. The Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, Legion of Doom, they attacked him and pulled a spike off of their pads and proceeded to dig it underneath his eye. And it made it look like they were actually gouging out his eye with a sharp spike, like they were blinding the man, and blood was coming out. And this is all on TBS, 6:05, PM. So people were watching, including me, young me, including Rob. We're watching on TV, and Dusty Rhodes looked like he's being stabbed to death.
And that's different because like the most outrageous thing they had done before that, when Jim Cornette, he jabbed his tennis racket handle into Baby Doll's stomach.
Oh yeah, that was bad.
But it was a blunt. It was a tennis racket handle. It wasn't a sharp object. He didn't cut her open, right? But it elicited the right amount of outrage, right? Because it was obviously it was supposed to piss everybody off because this coward Jim Cornette rammed his tennis racket into this woman's stomach, and of course people think you think about jamming some instrument into a woman's stomach like that, people immediately think about is this going to mess her up from having kids or something, right?
That was the implication, yeah.
Yeah, and so it evoked the right amount of outrage. People were, because he was wearing Kevlar to the arenas after that. About a month or so later, Dusty and Magnum, they grabbed him in the middle of the ring and put a rope around his neck and tied him to the back of a truck. Right? Times were a little different back then.
A little bit,
but the thing about that though is they tied him to the truck. And then, like, the Midnight Express came in and they untied him as they were about to pull off. So you didn't see him getting dragged from the truck.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So the thing with Dusty and the Road Warriors, they went all the way with it. They drove the spike into his, it looked like they were driving the spike into his forehead and stabbing him and gouging his eye with it. Right. And so that's different. Like, it was a difference between something being implied or something like almost happening, but not quite. And in that case, they went all the way with it. And, and that just ran afoul of, the Turner people and I guess sponsors probably. And yeah, Dusty got fired over it.
That was good drama. Now, see that, folks? So for all you whippersnappers out there, okay, who want to try to tell Rob or myself anything about pro wrestling, if you weren't allowed to see Dusty Rhodes get maimed on TV, kindly, check your privilege there, young man and young woman, young person, because you don't know we've seen some things, okay? We've seen some things. Speaking of which, Rob, you've built up a reputation now within the IWC. You're the guy that goes on Duke Loves Wrestling and is keeping up with the stats on women's wrestling. That's been the universal word on you now. So I don't know if I should apologize or congratulate you because I'm always getting canceled. So if you start getting inboxed and people start yelling at you and stuff like that, it's not your fault, Rob. It's my fault. Okay.
Well, I always say this. Tell me where I said something that was false.
That's it. Well, let's start with this. First of all, really quickly, let's go through the ranking one more time. Just give me the numbers and the name of the shows, starting from the top and going to the bottom. So the best to the worst. When it comes to promoting women's wrestling, which television shows based in North America promoted the most women's wrestling and who promoted the least?
A few weeks ago, I said NXT was first, Raw was second, Impact was third, SmackDown was fourth, Dynamite was fifth. That has not changed. So again, so in 2021, Raw was first and NXT was second. They've switched places now. In 2021, SmackDown was third and Impact was fourth, and they've switched places. And now Dynamite is still fifth.
So one of the biggest questions that I've been asked, Rob, including by women fans, is why haven't you added Rampage into your rankings?
Well, because I just, I didn't think to do it at first, and I thought about it, and I was like, well, because one, they have the same form. There's a lot of variation. They always have one women's match, pretty much. There wasn't, and it's only an hour. So,
but how would that change? And you don't have all the data, so feel free to say you have to go back and look at that. Don't box yourself into a corner here. But because it's an hour-long program and they're featuring a women's match, that means that a higher percentage of their overall runtime is dedicated to women's wrestling. So Rampage would be at least in the middle of the pack, right?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Because my little kind of standard that I came up with was that you should aim to have one match for each hour of television your show is. So
would that mean that Rampage would actually skew the numbers then? Because they do that.
It would skew the numbers and not in a way that is anything meaningful.
Gotcha.
And that's the thing, right? Because you always have, if you're gonna have a piece in there that skews the numbers, it should be, it should be something meaningful.
Like Raw. Raw is the only 3-hour program on the list.
Raw is kind of because it's 3 hours. They should have more just because they have more time, but they don't. And
they don't.
So honestly, to me, that is a good way of measuring really whether or not somebody's actually, putting in, the effort. Because, like for example, I've said this before, NXT has a 2-hour show, and they have 2 matches almost every week. It's almost guaranteed for them to have 2 matches. They occasionally have just 1 match. But almost every week they have 2. Lots of weeks they have 3.
I was about to say they probably have as many 3 women matches weeks as they do 1 women match weeks.
Probably, and they might have
evens
more.
It all. Yeah.
Because for the year, NXT for the year, they averaged over 2 matches a year. 2 matches a week, not a year. But,
it's incredible.
Yeah, and in 2 hours, NXT averaged 2.4 matches a week in 2 hours.
Damn.
Okay.
Which means that they have a lot of 3 women match weeks throughout the year.
Yes. In fact, I'm looking at it now. It's just like they've got a bunch of 3 match weeks. They got a 4 match week in there. They got a 5 match week in there. One week they did 5 matches in 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean that's just incredible. Shout out to Shawn Michaels.
Yes,
whatever influence you have over that's good stuff, man.
And they don't just do the matches. Also, I mean, they have matches, they have promos, they have backstage scenes, they have vignettes. They fit all of that into 2 hours.
Women, one could argue, are more prominent in NXT than the men. I would argue they're at least the most interesting.
Well, yes, they are, because a lot of the the men's roster, outside of a few people, Carmelo and Braun Breaker, Grayson Waller, Trick. And just a side note, Trick is going to surprise some people on the main roster.
Yeah, I think he's a champion in the waiting. Yeah. I'm over the moon over him. He's fantastic.
Yeah. But outside of those 4, there are a bunch of guys who, they can wrestle and they can have good matches, but on the men's side on NXT, those 4 are the really interesting guys. And the Schism group is,
and they need them
since they added Ava Rain.
They better do something. Yeah.
Yeah. But that, as far as interesting, men who kind of stand out and who are interesting on NXT, it's that group. Whereas on the women's side, they have a lot of a lot more interesting women up and down the roster. Now, obviously, it's developmental, so it's a bit. I'd say it's a bit reckless to jump out and say that everybody's going to be a star, because I see that sometimes on Twitter. We don't know where these folks are going to land when they get on the main roster, because it's an entirely different experience. But within this particular setting for this particular show, the women's side of NXT has far more interesting, characters, I guess you want to call them, than the men's side does. And so they get matches. There are some weeks where they have the same number of matches as the men. There are a lot of weeks where they have the same number of matches as the men. And they have, again, and they have all the other stuff too. And because sometimes the excuse you hear is that, well, they only had 1 match on Raw or 1 match on SmackDown, but they had all these other things. They had a promo, they had vignettes, they had backstage, this, that, and the other. It's okay, but NXT does that stuff and they have the matches. Right?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And nothing should fill in for a match. There's nothing more. No one is going to make more money not wrestling. You got to wrestle. You got to have a match. Now, don't get me started on you people out there who are going to sit there. Well, what about Goldberg? What about this? Yeah, that's because they wrestled their matches already. They're in legendary status now. Brock Lesnar's a legend now, so he doesn't have to wrestle as much. Roman Reigns is a legend now. He doesn't have to wrestle as much. But they make their money having matches. And eventually, you got to see the physical altercations. So
yes.
That's what it is. Now, let me switch speeds for a second here, because one of the biggest pushbacks that I got, and including from a former guest on the show, Sade from DDT Divas, shout out to Sade. She took a little exception to your research there, Rob, and I'm gonna clip this and play it in the Nation of African American Wrestling, because I know that there are a lot of humanoids in that group. The majority of them are fantastic folks, but there are some humanoids in there who just can't seem to wrap their head around me calling Tony Khan a scumbag for promoting less women's wrestling in 2022 than he did in 2021. People can't wrap their heads around that. They don't believe that I should be calling the man a scumbag for treating women as less than. Okay? And to all you folks who can't wrap your head around that, all I have to say is, you can kiss my almond milk full backside. Okay, I'm lactose intolerant like Tony, so I love to bring that up because I know it gets under his skin. But go to hell, because I'm going to call everybody a scumbag who treats women as less than, and you're just going to have to deal with that. But
look, it's pretty simple. Okay, if you had one women's match every week in 2020, if you had one women's match every week in 2021, if you have one women's match every week in 2022, what does that mean? It means you have one women's match every week.
But the fact that they had less women's matches in 2022, they actually showed them less, is fascinating to me.
Well, because and we're talking decimal places.
Yeah, we're talking decimal points, but it's not an increase, right? So she says to me, well, I feel they've done a better job. And I feel that, the AEW, they've done better with the women's roster this year. So I don't really agree. And it's like, well, I don't know what you're disagreeing with, ma'am, because he's promoting them less.
Has their roster gotten better? Has it gotten more interesting? Yes. Also, they have found I'd say they're better at some things. Well, because Jade is such a big star, she gets time on the show every week, whether she has a match or not. Right. And that was, they didn't.
How many matches did Jade have in 2022? Because I see a lot of humanoids bring this up too.
Because
just about how they're pushing Jade, and it's like she had less than 20 matches in 2022, didn't she?
On TV, by my count, she had 8 matches on Dynamite. Now, don't know how many. Well, let me make sure that's right here.
Listen.
All right, now she had more. Now, and I'm about to make an argument actually for keeping track of Rampage because she did wrestle on Rampage. But again, now I'm kind of debating myself here. Because the thing with Rampage is, look, the flagship show is Dynamite.
That's where you make the money. Yep, that's where you make the money.
Dynamite has more than twice the audience of Rampage. Rampage gets in the 400,000s. And now we've said before, now we've had our conversations about the Nielsen numbers, but the number for Dynamite is more than twice the number for Rampage.
Yep.
Okay. So even both numbers are undercounted because of Nielsen or whatever. But one number is twice than the other one. So it's, the show that gets the more people is obviously more important. So putting, it's not enough to say, well, we have women wrestle on Rampage also. Well, okay, it's not the same. It's not the same thing. And just look, NXT gets a third of the audience of Raw and SmackDown, okay, which is when people come up, other people say, well, they have to get these people familiar with the audience. And you say, well, they were on NXT. Well, NXT gets a third the viewership that, Raw and SmackDown do. So that means 2/3 of your audience has never seen these folks. So Rampage gets less than half the audience of Dynamite. Putting somebody on Rampage to have a match is not the same as putting them on Dynamite.
No.
The YouTube shows get 300,000-400,000 views, which is, the same that Rampage does live on TV. So again, putting them on one of those other shows is not the same as putting them on Dynamite. So Jade had 8 matches on Dynamite that I counted here. But as far now, this thing about the overall is the overall presentation better? Maybe, because again, Jade is somebody who, because she's such a big star, you give her a few minutes every week, match or no match, right? And because now before she became a thing, they did that wasn't there. So you had your one women's match, and then in that space, you would have some other thing with the men.
What's going on out there, everybody? This is Terrence Williams, TW, talking about on your social media, and you are listening to Duke Loves Wrestling.
So, here's the thing. In 2022, Jade had 24 matches. Now, if AEW has 2 TV programs on every week, right? Rampage and Dynamite, that's 8 TV events per month, right?
Yes.
So, you do the math on that. That's what, 96 total TV events? And then they have...
Yes. Yep, 96. Yes.
Listen, I'm not a mathematician like you, so you definitely got to check my math just to make sure. And then they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pay-per-views, right? So that's a total of 101 opportunities for Jade Cargill to wrestle. And she only wrestled 24 times in 2022.
Yeah, so 8 shows a month. I'm just... All right.
It's less than a quarter of the year that
Yes.
she wrestled, right?
Yes. So that is a quarter of the shows. It's 24 matches out of 96 television shows is exactly one quarter.
But and then you add the pay-per-views on top of that. If you want to do that.
Exactly.
Well, I know you're not tracking that, but yeah, you're right. Let me leave the pay-per-views alone. But my point is, she barely wrestles.
Right. Now, but again, but she's on TV every week.
True.
Let me put it this way. If somebody wants to say that the overall presentation is better, I will concede that because they have Jade gets a segment every week, and that wasn't the case before last year. So technically, is that more time for the women? Yes. However,
is she? Well, hold on a second. Table that though. Is she getting the Britt Baker time? Because Britt's gotten less.
No, Britt still gets time though.
Has Britt gotten less though?
That I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
But Britt still gets time on TV. It's not like she's gone. So if you add up Britt's time and Jade's time, it's more than before Jade became a thing. All right. Let's say Britt used to get 6 minutes, and now she gets 4 and Jade gets 5. Well, that's 9 minutes total versus just the 6 minutes that Britt would get by herself before. So it is more time.
What would be the male equivalent of this? Let's flip it for a second. Let's say that AEW or any wrestling promotion is only going to feature 2 men prominently, and then the rest of the division, as a whole, everybody in the division is only going to get 1 match per television program. What would be the male equivalent of this? If you were to pick 2 men in that company, who's it going to be?
All right. Well, it's hard to come up with a one-on-one equivalent, but let me just say this, okay? Every week on Raw, pretty much every week on Raw, Seth Rollins gets a promo and he gets a match. And some of those promos are monologues. And some of the matches go 20 minutes. And there are some weeks where he gets the monologue and the 20-minute match. Okay? On SmackDown, the Bloodline, they usually get some type of monologue segment that goes 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes of them talking, right? And then Roman doesn't wrestle on TV that much, but Solo wrestles on TV. Jimmy and Jay wrestle on TV. Sammy wrestles on TV. So they're involved every week. They're involved in some type of match, and quite often it's the main event, and that gets 10 or 15 minutes. They get a monologue segment in the ring that could go anywhere from 6 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on what all they say. And then sometimes the monologue isn't as long, but then they do some stuff backstage. So the Bloodline gets a good half hour of SmackDown pretty much every week. Okay,
but that's look how many people that is. That's what,
true.
5 people.
Yes. Now, but on Raw, sometimes Seth Rollins will get an 8-minute monologue and a 20-minute match.
But if you were to pick one, just you can only pick 2 men, because we're talking Jade, we're talking Britt. 2 men, and then the rest of the division, everybody's getting 1 match combined. That's it. So either you're in or you're out. So who does a Bloodline normally feud with? Let's say whether it be Kevin Owens or I don't know.
Now it's Sheamus and Drew McIntyre.
Yeah, exactly. Sheamus probably wrestles. Out of everybody on SmackDown, Sheamus probably wrestles the most, with the exception of Gunther. Now Gunther's been wrestling a lot lately.
Yeah.
So either one of those 2, right?
But it's hard to come up with a one-on-one comparison.
Well, here's my point. I'm just trying to show an example. Imagine if all you saw was Seth Rollins and let's say Sheamus, and then you had your match on each program, men's match, and that's it. Everything else is women. Come on, folks. Does that even make sense? Does that even make sense?
No, it doesn't. And now look, so when we're talking about overall presentation, that's why I said before that, promos and vignettes and all that, they're not substitute for matches.
No, not at all.
They go along with matches. They supplement matches. They complement matches.
Well, let's take it a step further. But and stay on your point. Let's take it a step further because Tony Khan has announced that we're going to get a new look for Dynamite, right?
Okay.
And it's going to be a new look and feel. They're changing the colors, so now it's going to be red and blue. Thank you, SmackDown and Raw. And they're going to have everything lit up more and all this, even though it's already bright. But here's what I noticed looking at the advertised matches for this upcoming Dynamite. There are more people of color, especially black people, on this advertising for Dynamite than I have ever seen in the history of AEW. So what that tells me, all of our brothers, sisters, non-binaries, extraterrestrials out there listening right now, what that tells me, all of the skinny jean wearing scumbags who are not top shelf out there, what that tells me is that the network dug into Tony Khan's ear the same way we've been doing all along, Rob, since the inception of this piece of trash company that he's run into the ground that's still not profitable. What that tells me is Tony Khan has finally been forced to do the thing that we said he should have been doing all along, at least one of those things. He's actually going to start promoting more people of color regularly. And I'm going to tell you right now, Rob, within the next 30 days, there is going to be at least one black wrestler who's going to be in the title hunt against MJF. I guarantee it, because Tony doesn't have a choice now. It clearly is not what he wants to do. But because they're losing money, they're losing viewerships, they can't get strong sponsorship, they're about to lose a TV deal. He's going to start doing the things we've been telling him to do all along. What do you think about that?
Possibly. Now, remember, we just had the thing a couple weeks ago with Starks and MJF. So, look, he needs to start by, solidifying Ricky Starks' status on the roster. He's somebody who should be a regular world title contender. He shouldn't. All right, this title match he got with MJF should not be a one-off. He should be consistently in the title hunt. He should do something with Powerhouse Hobbs, and Powerhouse Hobbs should be in the world title picture. Okay, I don't know what they're doing.
Hulking bastard like that, and you mean to tell me he can't be putting pressure on your chicken heel champion? Pardon my French.
Exactly.
Come on.
Right. Exactly. And so he should be in that picture. And look, everybody is not a world title contender. Everybody is not that material, but Starks is, Hobbs is, both of them are. They should both be in the world title picture. They should not be wrestling for the TNT title anymore or whatever. Okay. They should be in the world title picture. Okay. And
Keith Lee and Swerve shouldn't be feuding with each other. They should be in the world title picture. If they're going to feud, they should be feuding for that.
Now that they split up, then yes, they should both, sometime this year, they should both be in the running for a world title shot of some kind. Okay. So if you're asking me, what do I want to see from Tony? Yes. Okay. You have people there now, right, who are world title material, or at least world title shot material. So they should be regularly in the picture. Okay. The way that, Bobby Lashley just, now every, at some point during the year, he's going to be getting a world title shot, right? And you can count on it now.
Count on it. You can count on it. Him and Drew McIntyre. I know Drew McIntyre is white, but they're treated equally.
Yes.
You can always plug them into the world title picture at any point, and if they're not doing that, then they're back down to the secondary title picture, which means they're still keeping warm enough to be bumped back up into the main event.
Exactly. So we named 4 people there you can do that with. Okay. So, 2023, let's see it. Okay. And it just, look, and because now that we're into a new year, it is the time, we need to think about, okay, well, what do we want to see these people do? What do we want to see these people do? Do we want to see, what do we want to see more of? Do we want to see people moved up? What exactly? Because you don't give them any rest, because if you let them rest, they're going to do whatever they want.
And you encourage me, which is why I'm staying on them, Rob. And just so you know, Tony is dead pissed at me over some of the things that I said about him in 2022. But I'm going to let him know, Tony, Rob gave me permission to keep the pressure on you, so that's what I'm going to do. I think it's ridiculous that in 2023 we're still having this debate about equal rights for people of color and for women, because essentially that's what this is all about. Tony Khan, his idea of a top wrestler is a white guy, period. And we know that because that's all he's promoted as his top wrestlers. So for us to continue to say, hey, why aren't you featuring more women? Why aren't you putting women in a position where they can actually make equal money to men like you claimed that you were going to allow them to do? What's going on here? Where are the people of color, especially black male singles wrestlers who are top contenders for the title? I'm not talking one-offs. I'm not talking treating them like Scorpio Sky, where you give him one title shot and then he friggin' disappears. And then next thing you know, he's playing second fiddle to Ethan Page, who's a bum, by the way. Ethan Page is a bum. He's a never was and a never will be. He's a bum. Okay? Let me say it again. Ethan Page is a bum. What has he ever done in wrestling? Okay? You're going to take a guy like Scorpio Sky with a body like that and wrestling ability like that, and you're going to make him play second fiddle to Ethan Page? And what was the other idiot's name? Lambert? Are you kidding me? You know, Tony Khan is so transparent how much he has a disdain for women and people of color. It's embarrassing. And I'm going to tell you something. A lot of the Hispanic wrestlers in that company, they're getting more vocal about their frustration with the way that they've been booked in that company. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, and
you bring it out of me, Rob.
It's pretty telling that Dragon Lee said that, you know, one big reason he chose NXT was because he looked at the situation over there and did not want to get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, Tony signs somebody and he puts them on TV a couple times, then he forgets about them.
Because and doesn't even talk about the Hispanic wrestlers we've seen, because you know, Santana and Ortiz, did they even get a title shot ever?
One of the best teams coming into the company, and the way that they were buried. I mean, you just got to look at Tony and the Young Bucks, and you got to scratch your head, man.
Yeah, and you know, so now you know, Pentagon and Ray Phoenix are doing the thing with, they're doing the thing with the Elite, okay,
which amounts to nothing. They're trios. This is a tag team with two guys who could be world champion if you book them right, and they're being treated again like they're mid-carders, right?
Yeah. So it's just, you know, what, you know, again, you know, it's just a question of what are we looking for in 2023? And now, look, I mean, I guess the biggest thing is you want regularity, right? Meaning that, you know, people of color in the title picture, and it's not a big deal because it happens. It's a regular thing, right? And so it's not a big deal anymore. That's what you're looking for, right? Because like we said with Bobby Lashley, you know what? He know that at some point in the year he's going to get a title shot, a world title shot on one of these pay-per-views or on some big TV show at least, right? We know that, you know, I mean, the Usos have been tag team champions forever, and you know, when they're not that anymore, then the Street Profits will be again at some point, and then, you know, the New Day will be again at some point before they're done on the main roster. We know that, you know, I mean, Bianca's been entrenched as Raw Women's Champion for going on a year now, and even when that does come to an end, we know she'll be back at it before long. You know, so it's just people who are regularly in the picture, and you don't have to worry about them. You know, you don't have to worry that they're going to be, you know, cast off into the, you know, the Phantom Zone somewhere, right? To quote Superman reference, you know, and you know, and that's the key. You want. I mean, you look at NXT with Roxanne Perez. She comes in there. She came out of, you know, Booker T's Reality of Wrestling. She was in Ring of Honor for a bit, and she showed that she can do the work. And you know, and when the thing with Mandy happened, they needed to switch the title off of Mandy. Who did they go to? Right,
and they were going to go to her anyway.
Yes, it's just,
you know,
but they felt like
sped it up. Yeah,
they felt comfortable that they could do it now.
Which right? This is interesting because Roxanne was able to leapfrog people who had gained a lot of notoriety and I dare I say more buzz than her for short pockets of time. You look at, Faith the Lioness, what do they call her now in there?
Oh, Nikita Lyons.
Nikita Lyons. You look
she's
at
she's better than Nikita Lyons.
Well, clearly,
when the bell rings, she's better. I
mean, clearly, even Cora Jade, who I feel she has to focus on her character development because her wrestling is just not there. And I don't know what the hell's going on with Cora. She stepped out and suddenly she's as dark as Mandy Rose used to be. Cora Jade looks like a strong black woman with all that tan that she has going on, that fake and bake. I don't know what the hell's going on with her. But she has to work on her character development because the wrestling just ain't there. She couldn't keep up with Roxanne when they were in the ring together, and that's why Roxanne was able to leapfrog her as well. And even Lash Legend. I mean, Lash Legend is an incredible athlete, and she came in with a lot of fanfare, and she's doing well enough, but she hasn't been able to do what Roxanne's been able to do. So,
and but just again, I guess my bigger point is just regularity. That it should not be a surprise if a person of color is in a title picture, right? You shouldn't be shocked anymore.
Facts.
And if we're still surprised that that's happening on your wrestling show, then you are behind.
Let me ask you this, since we're in 2023, Rob, and I'll bring it home on this. When you look at the totality of what AEW has been able to do on television since it's been on television, especially Rampage, especially Dynamite. I'm talking Dynamite specifically because I know Rampage is a disaster. If you're Warner Brothers Discovery, are you giving AEW an increase and therefore a new deal? Or are you going to treat them like the Republicans are treating Kevin McCarthy right now for Speaker of the House, where you make him feel like he has a chance and then you reject the hell out of him, basically kick him to the curb. Kevin McCarthy will not be Speaker of the House unless he's able to do some crazy House of Cards threatening and wheeling and dealing, which if he couldn't get it done last night, I don't know what to tell you there, Kevin.
Good. He just lost his 5th vote.
So that's embarrassing, right? That's embarrassing. That's 5
and listen, and I know a lot of people like to shit on Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi never took something to the floor that didn't win. Okay.
Oh, and Nancy Pelosi warned us late summer that McCarthy doesn't have the votes, so he better not be thinking he's going to be Speaker because he doesn't have the votes.
Yeah.
So she's like, if the Republicans come in power, it doesn't matter. McCarthy ain't going to be it.
Yeah. You never, for those of you who, if you're still starting to study Congress or whatever, never bring anything to the floor if you don't already have the votes.
Well, so in the comparison to AEW and really Tony Khan, because if AEW doesn't get a TV deal from Warner Brothers Discovery, if they don't stay on TNT and TBS, this is an indictment of Tony Khan's leadership. What do you think? Do you think that they've done enough to justify getting a new deal? Or do you feel that they're going to have to go somewhere else, or they're going to have to take a significant cut to stay on TV?
Well, I think it comes down to, does Warner Media have... do they have something else? Do they have a suitable replacement? Right.
Well, they've cut bigger shows though.
Yes, no, but this is TV, so you have cutting a movie from HBO Max. You don't have to replace that.
Sure.
Okay. You cut something off of your TV schedule, then you have to put something there.
Sure.
You can't just go dead black for 2 hours. So the question is, well, one, are they looking for a replacement? We don't know that. But then the other thing is that, do they have one? Because we know that, we know what size audience they get every Wednesday. We know that they finish usually within the top 5. And when there's not like basketball or something, they finish number 1 still on Wednesday. But also, how much ad revenue are they generating? All that type of thing. So, and we know that they get paid a rights fee is like $40 million a year. Okay. So that's a flat fee. And
they're looking for at least a 4 or 5x increase. They
well,
want
that's what Brandon Thurston said. And he's crazy.
Well, but you got to know something about Brandon though, and he's been on the show a lot, and I give Brandon a hard time because he turned into a shill for AEW, which is unfortunate because he's a very talented person.
He puts out some very good information when he's not in the tank for Tony.
Well, but here's the thing: the creator of WrestleNomics, for those who don't know, is Chris Mookie Harrington. Chris Mookie Harrington handed over the reins to WrestleNomics to Brandon Howard Thurston because Chris Mookie Harrington took a permanent position with All Elite Wrestling, and he is now one of their vice presidents. He's an actual vice president. He actually does real work. It's not just a title. So Brandon's bread is buttered because technically his grand poobah is one of the VPs of AEW. Brandon owes all of that to Chris Harrington. And Daniel Garcia, by the way, was trained by Brandon Howard Thurston. So when you see Daniel Garcia getting all this TV time that's really unjustified, you can thank the network of Chris Harrington, the VP. It's all connected here, right?
Yeah, and so it really comes down to what ad revenue they're generating. Is it enough? Does Warner Media think they can get more ad revenue for less money with somebody else or with something else? I think that's really what it comes down to. I mean, we have our criticisms of the content and the quality of the content of the programming, but it comes down to, is there something else that can give them more ad revenue for less money, for less of a cost?
I think what's telling, and we don't see this on WWE's end, by the way, I think what's telling is that the ratings for whatever comes on before Dynamite is higher than Dynamite. And the ratings for whatever precedes Dynamite is higher than Dynamite. So that means people are changing the channel and then coming back when this nonsense is over. And usually what precedes Dynamite, or what's ahead of it, is Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
Which for the most part, they destroyed Dynamite in the ratings. And then right after that is whatever other type of programming like Big Bang Theory. It's a television show that's, in reruns now, but it's something popular enough that people will tune in to go watch it. I think that says a lot about the problems that Dynamite is having. It's not the network. It's the actual programming that's a problem.
Yeah. And what I found in this, because I have kept track of rating stuff for Dynamite and Rampage and Raw and SmackDown. So with Dynamite, that particularly the last quarter, I'd say since
CM Punk.
after the Brawl Out thing happened, they were actually kind of stable for a few weeks. But then once they settled the world title situation, in fact, let me see.
Wait, are you going to tell me that MJF is not a draw? Is that what you're going to tell me right now?
Well, alrighty. So here we go. I'm going to my spreadsheets here, everyone. Okay. So for 2022, all right, after Grand Slam was when they settled the world title thing, where I think Mox won he won the world title again. Since Grand Slam, it's been down, and from November. They dipped into the 800s in November, and they didn't come back out until the middle of December, where they had 2 special episodes, and then last week they were back down in the 800s again.
So is MJF the worst drawing champion in the history of AEW?
I
think at least for television, we'd have to say that, right?
I guess so. I mean, and
incredible.
Well, and Punk, look, okay, because, CM Punk and people who are kind of CM Punk partisans, they are absolutely in the right to say that he affected viewership in a positive way. They are absolutely right to say that he affected pay-per-view buys in a positive way. You know, they're bigger. Most of their bigger pay-per-view buys were shows that he was on, and he was a positive influence on TV ratings.
Does this have anything to do with Bryan Danielson? Can we put any of this blame on his lack of ability to draw more eyeballs?
Looking at what they've done with him, right? I mean, and look, and he seems to be like not to be one of those guys that doesn't really care.
I think part of the reason why they're not doing more with him is him. I don't think he's allowing it to happen.
Well, and then you know what? Then here's the thing, right? Then that's on Tony, right? Because
manage.
You don't bring Bryan Danielson in to be one of the boys,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Look, even if he wants to be one of the boys, and you need to sit him down, you need to tell him, no, I didn't bring you here to be one of the boys.
That's right.
Okay.
You need to make me some money.
And so we're gonna, at some point we're gonna put you in the world title feud, and we're gonna put that title on you, and you're gonna walk out and you're gonna be champion for a few months. Because why? Because that's why I brought you here. I didn't bring you here to be one of the guys, and and he didn't bring Punk in to be one of the guys.
Yeah, regardless of whatever Punk wanted, you're going to be champion because that's what's going to bring me the most eyeballs, period.
That's why I brought you here.
I don't care if you break your leg every time you do something. You're going to come in here and you're going to work.
But look, there are roles on the roster. Some people are world champions, some people are mid-carders, etc. Some people you bring in there, there's no point in bringing them in there for them to be just one of the guys.
Yeah.
Right? Like Bill Goldberg, when Goldberg comes back, what do? They put him in a title match. You know why? Because Bill Goldberg, even at his age, still draws money if you put him in a title match.
Yep.
Okay. And that's why. Okay. Or you put him in some big match against, Braun Strowman or Bobby
special
Lashley.
attraction match. You have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
He still draws doing that. Okay. And even at his age. All right. There's a reason that when Brock Lesnar comes back, it's a big match with a big opponent.
Well,
Same
look,
thing.
They put John Cena in the main event on SmackDown.
Right. They didn't put John Cena in the middle of the show wrestling like Drew Gulak or somebody, right? Yeah. No. Yeah. They, so Danielson has been doing this thing where it's like, oh, I want to work Wheeler Yuta. I want to, wrestle with this guy. I want to, and have these matches with these guys. And no, that's not what they brought you there for, buddy.
Let me tell you something. Bryan Danielson, I'm a big fan of yours. I've been there since the beginning. Okay. I saw you in ROH at the Era of Honor Begins. Okay. I know your trainer. Okay. Let me tell you something flat out. If you are destroying AEW on purpose, then kudos to you. You've been doing a fantastic job of it. Okay. WWE is going to give you a fat bonus for that because you absolutely are the poison pill in that company. So if you're doing it on purpose, I give you a lot of kudos for that. If this is by accident and you're not doing it on purpose, then you're a jerk. Because that company, hold on a second, that company is lacking in star power. That company is at a point where they're trying to fight for a new contract, a new TV deal. They need an increase so they can pay people. And you're sitting around talking about you don't want to have more T-shirts because you don't want to add more stuff to the environment or some nonsense. Let me tell you something, Bryan Danielson. If you're doing it on purpose, I salute you, my brother, because that's some devious stuff. And I kind of like it. If this is just, by accident, then I think you're one of the biggest jerks, and you're one of the biggest reasons, other than Tony Khan, why that company is failing today, because you're a big enough star that you could bring this company up. And the fact that you're not allowing yourself to be the top guy in that company is legitimately one of the most ridiculous. I would fire your ass immediately for being a complete and utter selfish jerk. And don't tell me, well, I roll around with the guys in the back and I try to train them. The quality of wrestling still sucks, Brian. Okay? You need to be in the main event. You need to be the champion. You need to be doing the press tours. You need to be selling merchandise. You need to help that company get their TV deal. And if you personally are doing anything to impede that, and you're not doing it on purpose, you're a jerk. And if you're doing it on purpose, you are a sinister person, and I love it. I'm sorry, Rob. You're going to get canceled for that.
No, but Yeah, I mean, he needs to be in a bigger role on that show. He needs to be in a higher place on the card.
I would fire his ass immediately the first time he told me he didn't want to sell T-shirts. Get out of my company. This is not a charity. I'm not here to be your friend. Go wrestle down at the VFW. Get out of my company. Your ass is going to be the main event. You're going to be the champion.
Look, Moxley postponed his vacation because they needed somebody to hold the world title.
Exactly.
And
Bryan Danielson is saying he don't even want more T-shirts because he don't want to add more stuff to the environment. Bro, go wrestle at the Arboretum. Get the hell out of my company.
Yeah, so you have to ask, well, what they bring him there for?
We know what they brought him in here for, but the question is, why are they allowing him to act like he's in charge? Bryan Danielson, you're not in charge. You are an employee. And Tony, all of your faults, all of the piss poor management, I don't understand why you would let this guy do whatever he wants. He works for you. Tell that guy he's going to be champion and he's going to do it, or he can leave. Because quite frankly, he's not adding anything positive to your bottom line at this point. You don't need him. He needs to go, or he needs to start doing the right thing. Period.
Yeah, and that's what it is. They need to do that with him because Mox has given his all for that company.
Mox peaked.
Well, but he's given his all for that company, and he deserves some time off.
And he deserves to have a viable person who's built up enough that when he wrestles them, they can make some money. Because Mox, he's peaked. He can't draw more on his own. He can't make that company any better than it is. He's peaked. Same with Jericho.
Right.
Jericho's peaked.
Yeah.
So Danielson has to step up. We need him to step. MJF, this has been a complete disaster. He's not a draw yet, and it's not his fault. It's Tony's fault for the way he booked him. You know, so Danielson, I'm serious. Listen, they haven't gotten over the fact that Cody Rhodes is gone, because these are the moments where you plug Cody Rhodes in and he stabilizes everything.
Right, and they should have that stupid stipulation where you couldn't challenge for the world title.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense. But bigger than that, Tony should have given Cody whatever money he wanted. Yeah, how do you let a guy who is your stabilizing force leave? How do you allow that to happen? You know, that's like WWE letting Seth Rollins go. It can't happen. You know what I mean? Seth Rollins is not Roman Reigns. No, of course he's not. But you know who Seth Rollins is? He's the stabilizer. He can be champion at any point and still make you money.
Honestly, it also looks like Cody was largely somebody who was holding the locker room together.
Of course he was. That's what the wrestlers told me. And I used to give Cody a hard time, and I'll still give him a hard time because I feel like he could have done more in terms of getting women more time on television. He could have done more in terms of black male singles wrestlers being promoted as top stars. And Cody used to say, well, who is there? Which was just so ignorant on his part, and I still give him hell for that. But here's what I know about Cody. And I know this because I've spoken to enough people in AEW. He did try a lot. And he did go to bat for a lot of people. He did settle a lot of beefs before they blew up to worse. Cody did about as much as he probably did about as much as he could with Tony Khan. And Tony was listening to the kids, the Young Bucks, listening to MJF, listening to Britt Baker, being influenced by people who never done anything in wrestling ever in their lives, who couldn't spell wrestling, quite frankly. And it shows because once Cody's gone, the whole place fell apart. Because CM Punk, he's a big name until the bell rang, and then you got to see how terrible the quality of wrestling was. The numbers were going down to a significant point. He needed more people to help bring him back up. You don't let a guy like Cody Rhodes go. Punk and Cody could have been the biggest wrestling match of the year.
Something really stuck out with me. Some people of color who worked there who said that Cody was somebody that was there for them. They confided in and all that stuff. And good on him for that. No
one was talking about Kenny Omega that way. They were saying the opposite about him. Everyone who ever talked about Omega said they were butting heads. All these women said they were butting heads with Kenny Omega.
So that was a big loss when Cody went over, because again he like I said, he was a stabilizing force, on and off screen. Yeah, he helped keep a lot of things together. Out of all those EVPs, he was the only one who had any type of pedigree as far as booking.
Yeah.
His father was one of the best bookers ever. He worked for Vince McMahon.
Yeah, and he was the Intercontinental Champion, so he was upper mid card for Vince McMahon.
So he'd been in the room with two of the best bookers ever.
Yeah.
So he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing, more so than those other guys. And so losing him, losing him is a big thing.
If they had Cody Rhodes, Rob, AEW would be a viable alternative to WWE. They would have a bigger television deal at the end of this year. And generally speaking, they'd be a pretty healthy company.
Well, because also, and Cody had those other deals with those other shows on TNT.
That too, which was just a net positive for AEW. Listen, Rob, you and I done talked about everything. We done went from women's wrestling to McCarthy screwing up. Why don't you let everybody know what's the best way that they can keep up with you? Because you're kind of a hot commodity these days, man. So, if you're going to debate about Rob the Genius, you can have the decency to tag him and reach out to him, invite him on your shows, name him. Don't just say that guy, name him. Like, have the decency to actually shout this guy out by name because he's doing the work that you're debating about. So the least you can do is show that type of respect. But please, Rob, let him know.
Okay, so I'm RBONNE1 on Twitter. And here's okay. I'm not going to fight you on the timeline, okay? I'm not going to do that. If you want to debate me or you want to fight me or something about this, if you have a show, if you have a podcast of some type, invite me on your show. I will gladly show up and talk to you. Okay. I do not get in Twitter fights. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm too old for that shit. Okay. Okay. If you want to talk, if you want to have a discussion about, these things, then please, RBONNE1 on Twitter, DM me and say, hey, I'd love for you to come on so we can talk about this. Okay. Do not tweet at me on the timeline because I will probably ignore you. Okay. And if you've forgotten what I just said but you're interested, then reach out to Duke even and tell him to, message me or whatever. I will come talk to you. I love talking to people. Okay. I am not here to get in fights on the internet. Okay. All right. But you can, so you can reach me there on Twitter. I have a website, robsagenius.com. I write about pro wrestling. I write about comic books. I write about movies. I write about a bunch of stuff. Go read some of that. And again, if you take issue with something I write there and you want to talk about it, I will, whatever platform you have, I will come talk to you. Just again, I'm not going to fight you on the internet though. Okay. And you can, I'm actually on a podcast every week, the Mindless Wrestling Podcast with DJ and Jason. We are part of the Chairshot Radio Network, and you can hear us every week. And so that's, if you want to talk about pro wrestling or other things, that's all the ways to see what I got to say or reach out to me or whatever.
His name is Rob the Genius, and you can tell, the way that this guy was seamlessly able to talk about all these topics, he certainly is. Rob, we appreciate you as always, brother.
Always a pleasure, man.
This is Tony Schiavone, and we're desperately out of time on Duke Loves Wrestling.